Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Future of the Lions. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and thank you very much for joining me. I'm always up for rugby chats. Please let me know your thoughts if you're watching live down below, or if you're watching the recording on Twitter or YouTube. I'm always up for a good rugby chat. So, the future of the Lions is something that I've been asked about. The Scottish Canon asked me about that when we had a chat about the Lions on his YouTube channel. So go and have a look for the Scottish Canon YouTube channel. We had a good chat looking forwards at the Highlanders versus the Lions game, and one of the things we talked about was the future of the Lions. There are three groups of teams that have relied on borrowed players during the amateur era, and that have had to adapt to the professional era. Those ones I'm talking about are the county championship in the UK, that has had to really change and evolve its purpose and how it works in the UK, and it's become a kind of lower competition than the Aviva Premiership, whereas previously it used to be one of where a lot of the England selections would be taken from, and it's had to adapt itself to the professional era. The Barbarians are another club that borrows players from other people rather than having its own players, and they've had to adapt, and there are large question marks about their place in the professional space. The one organisation that kind of borrows players that has thrived in the professional era has been the Lions, and it's very much sold as a throwback to the amateur days, the last real tour, and it has all this mystique around it. And but the reason it has survived, whereas the other two have struggled, is dollars or pounds. The Lions is a cash cow like no other. Its ability to produce income is astounding, and that is why it is surviving in the professional age, because it's making the money. And let's be honest, the professional age is about the money, and that's why it has managed to survive. It definitely has had its shaky times. It wasn't a great tour to Australia under Hansen. Obviously the one to New Zealand that followed that under Woodward was an absolute disaster. So and there were big question marks after that as to the survivability of the Lions, and there were question marks before then as well. Ian McGeechan seems to have been the man who's come to the rescue and run successful Lion tours when there have been question marks, but let's be honest, his days are now gone. We're not going to see him coaching many more Lions tours, if any. So we have to, and what has restored it has been this return to its traditions and looking at its roots. And I think the Lions have now figured that out. And if you look at the way they market themselves and the messages they put out, it's all around that history, it's all around that tradition. But at the end of the day, they survive tomorrow because they bring in the dollars in a way that no others do. My understanding, it's something like £300,000 as an entry-level sponsor for the Lions. That's a chunk of cash for what is essentially 6 weeks, which is how long a tour goes on for. So these commercially, obviously, it's much longer. That the whole build-up is very well managed, and it's probably about a 2-year process. It'll go into hibernation for a bit in the run up to the next Rugby World Cup, and it'll all kick off after that again. But that's what it's about. If we look at what it is, as I say, it's an archaic institution. It runs a long tour, and yet we're trying to talk about player welfare and reducing games. It takes 4 countries, 3 of whom don't like the other one, and puts them together. So in a lot of ways, this really should not happen. It takes 4 unions together as well, and who have different opinions as to how these, as to how the modern world should go, how centrally controlled it should be, how the European Cup should be, European competitions, should be. So it's a bunch of people who don't necessarily always get on, having to get on for a short period of time. And one of the reasons that all works again is it's in their financial interest to do so. So there is that side of it. And I was a bit wavering in my enthusiasm for this tour until I went to the airport and was amongst all the other fans, because I was there as a fan, not in an official media position or any kind of strange like that. So I was just in the normal fan area, and the enthusiasm for the people, the energy that was there as in the sort of couple of hours waiting for the team to turn up was amazing and really got me going. The amount of people both here and on YouTube and on Twitter who have been talking about it is amazing. There is a lot of people emotionally involved and already thinking about how they're going to tour next time to South Africa. It's that big. So I think the future of the Lions is secure as long as money keeps coming in, and the money's going to keep coming in as long as we are invested and such big fans of it. And that's basically what it is. That's not to say that everything is rosy. I think there are a couple of things that the Lions need to do. And one of those is be competitive. The last time they were here in New Zealand, they clearly weren't 12 years ago. And that, I say, led to some serious question marks, and so they had to be competitive next time round. A lot of people saying, oh, that structure of the tour doesn't allow them to be competitive. Well, they have to be, otherwise, what's the point? We aren't going to go and start watching this if the team keeps losing every single time. So I think it needs to win at least one tour in every sort of round or series of them. And for me, that starts with South Africa, then Australia, and then New Zealand. So in those 3 tours, I think they have to win the Test series in one of those. This time round, they obviously won in Australia. The previous sort of round of 3 series, they won in South Africa. So that, I think, that is how frequently they need to be winning, I personally think, to maintain the interest and keep people believing they've got a chance, hence the whole point of going on tour and watching them. We also need to be careful about the naysayers. I mean, a lot of this negativity or some people questioning the future of the Lions comes out of both Ireland and Scotland predominantly. I've seen articles. Articles talking about how that actually the Lions, if Ireland and England can beat the Southern Hemisphere nations on their own, what's the point of the Lions? Is there any need for it? So we do need the strength of the Southern Hemisphere teams. We can't have Australia and South Africa descending down into sort of 10th or 11th ranked teams in the world. Then what's the point in the Lions going touring there if England and Ireland can go there and win games anyway? So that needs, the competitiveness is a two-way thing. I've also seen people calling it, from Ireland, particularly from Ireland, calling it colonial and archaic, and how his friends aren't interested in the Lions. Well, that's fine. Not everyone has to be interested in the Lions. That's fine. We don't have to be. But there are enough people and enough interest in it, and enough emotional investment in it, and that's the big thing here: is the investment in the brand. That this is going to continue. I don't think we're seeing any waning in the interest of the Lions by any stretch of the imagination. And when all these sponsors are putting in this amount of cash, they're also going to throw their marketing weight behind it. So it's not just the Lions marketing, but also the marketing of Standard of Life, of Land Rover, of Canterbury, who have all been doing their bit to push the brand and strengthen it as well going on. So I think amongst those things, the Lions is in a safe place. They are competitive at the moment. There are signs, say, in the future that either they'll become irrelevant because the countries individually can win, or they become irrelevant because they don't win ever. Those things have to be a bit balanced. That it still has to be a competitive tour for it to survive. A lot of us were down the dumps after the loss to the Blues, but were much more up when we came to. When we came after the Crusaders one, because it restored the competitiveness of the tour, and we're much happier and much more buoyant. So thank you for my little chat about how I think about the future of the Lions. I think it is in safe hands. I'll go for the final. The other thing is the length of tours. I think they need to maintain the old tour feel, and the fact that and they do need the number of games to prepare themselves for the tests. So the news that it's going to be restricted from 10 down to 8 games after the new after the next Rugby World Cup in the new so-called global calendar is a little bit of concern. I don't think it can shrink any more than that. Otherwise, it ceases to be the Lions, and it ceases to give them the opportunity to be competitive when it comes to those tests. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with my international predictions for the weekend. Also, I will be on straight after the Highlanders versus the Lions game with Fill Your Boots from the UK and Scott Hornell from New Zealand, giving you post-match reaction to the game. So come and join us for our expert analysis. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, above on Twitter, down below on YouTube. give it the old thumbs up on YouTube, and please share this if you've enjoyed it on Facebook, Twitter, and all of those kind of places where your friends hang out. Catch you all tomorrow. Have a good night.